Hey everybody, welcome to the Fantasy Players Club. I'm your host, Levi the Heartbreak Kid Valentine at Levi_Valentine on Twitter. Joining me are my co-hosts, Brent Hut Hikes. Follow him at Brent Hikes, Heikes on Twitter. And Trevin the Baby Maker Cremosta, whose tweets are too hot for your eyes. Fellas, we're getting close to the season and we got some big news this week.
We did, finally.
Not all great news, though. Unfortunately, Cam Akers is expected to miss the entirety of the 2021 season after rupturing an Achilles tendon while working out. Guys, this is heartbreaking for dynasty owners everywhere. Are you at all optimistic about Cam Akers' ability to come back from this?
It seems like it's really the one injury. Medical science and rehab have came a long ways to where most injuries, even ACL tears, aren't the even career effectors anymore. You get 10 months to recover, and most guys come back pretty strong from even ACLs now. That Achilles, it's the one thing that they haven't had a good history of most people coming back from that injury, Achilles tear.
Let me read you guys the last running back Achilles tear or ruptured Achilles. And I'll tell you what happened to him afterwards. 2010, Lendale White. When he came back, he'd never seen an NFL carry after that. Andre Brown from the Giants in 2010 ruptured his Achilles at 24 years old. He was out of the league within 2 more years. Michael LaShore, 2011. We all remember him. He was that really good running back from Illinois. Rookie year, he ruptured his Achilles, and he's been out of the league after 2 years. Ernest Graham, 2011, shortly after he was out of the league. Kendall Hunter in 2012. He played 2 more games after his ruptured Achilles, and then he was out of the league. Chris Wells from Ohio State, 2013, ruptured his Achilles and never played again. Vic Ballard from the Colts ruptured his Achilles, never played in the league again. Joe McKnight from USC for the New York Jets in the NFL ruptured his Achilles in 2014, then never came back. Arian Foster ruptured his Achilles after a couple great years with the Texans. He came back the following year, played 4 games, and got cut. Never played again. Brandon Oliver from the Chargers ruptured his Achilles in 2016. He was out of the league by 2017. I guess the only good, kind of success story from this is Deontay Foreman. In 2017, he tore his Achilles, played 1 game the following year, and played 6 games last year. So that's the most games someone's ever played in the last 11 years. And Isaiah Crowell in 2019 ruptured his Achilles. He hasn't played since. And now we have Marlon Mack. He's coming back this year, which kind of gives us a good sign what's going to happen with Mack. And I hope Cam Akers can get out of it. Can get over this and become a good football player, but the odds are against him. So it sucks.
And the success story of Freeman there, and those 5 games he played that second season afterwards. He rushed 54 times for 172 yards, 1 touchdown, 3-yard average per carry. So that's a success story.
Yeah, it's it's bad. Levi, do you have good news for us? Please.
No, I wish I did. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Marlon Mack this year. And obviously that's the closest thing from both an age and maybe a talent perspective that we have in recent years.
Yeah.
Cam Akers is on a different level than Marlon Mack, but hopefully he can come back. We'll see. And then honestly, though, I'm not optimistic. And if I have Cam Akers, which unfortunately I do in 1 league, I'm probably looking to sell for whatever I can get. I made an offer earlier today to the person who has Darrell Henderson on his team. I offered him Cam Akers and Devontae Smith for Jamar Chase. And I thought that was a pretty good offer if I would have been able to get that. He said it was a really fair offer. He just was going to stick with Chase. So that's the type of deal I would be looking to make if I were a Cam Akers owner. And honestly, unless there's somebody offering you something like a first-round pick, which I'd probably take at this point in your league, which there maybe are some people who are trying to show how big their brains are by doing what they think is buying low if they haven't done their research like Brent just outlined. You may be able to get that, and if you can, I'd probably take that. But what I think you really probably have to hope for is you hope that Marlon Mack comes back and gets some preseason buzz this year or has a decent game early in the year. And then everybody's like, well, if he can do it, because there's hope for Cam Akers. And that's probably the time to strike and sell is when Marlon Mack's getting a little buzz and everybody has a little more hope for Cam Akers. But I think most people are probably looking at that list that Brent just ran down and saying, this does not look promising, and so you're going to have a hard time selling him to most people. But it only takes one in your league who thinks they're smarter than everybody else and gives you that chance to sell for something decent. So that's the person I'd be looking for.
And we used to feel this way about ACL tears maybe like 20, 25 years ago. But now ACL tears, players come back pretty strong, and they're like they didn't miss a beat. And with the advances in medical science and everything, maybe it'll get better. And maybe Deontay Foreman, he was one of the recent ones I mentioned. He's been back for, the most out of those other guys that I mentioned. And we'll see what Marlon Mack does. And then hopefully Cam Akers will be, he's still a young guy. So I hope to see him back. I didn't like him that much as a rookie, and he kind of proved me wrong. And so it kind of sucks. I was expecting big things out of him this year, especially with Stafford at quarterback now.
Yeah.
I would just, if I could get a second round for him, I'd give him for a straight up second round. I would rather err on the side of nobody's ever come back strong from this instead of maybe this is the guy that will. And I think your value, based on that list, his value is about to be 0 in a year. So if you can get a second round pick instead of 0 in a year, I'd go for that.
Yeah, I think that what's the likelihood that his value dips below a second round pick before he plays next year, though? Like, that's what I'm kind of pondering too, Trevin. Like, I think second round is like probably the floor you're going to get until next season. Like, I think that offer will be out there to get from now until next season starts. And so there is the chance even that he gets a little more buzz as we get closer to next season, and this is more in the past, and people get a little more excited about him potentially coming back and what he could be. You might be able to get a little more. That'd be the only thing.
Yeah, but with that, once you run into those, everybody's excited for the rookies too. I don't know if anybody's willing to give up a second once they can see who they might get with that second round pick. And if Mack comes back, I can see your point that this might be his floor, but if Mack doesn't come back and they say this is done, I know you say he can't go any lower, but then you're maybe looking at third or fourth round pick. If you get a second now, I'd err on that side. But I'd be hoping to get rid of him for about anything because I think his value is about to be 0.
Yeah. I'm just willing to take a little more risk because you've already lost so much at this point. Like, at this time next year, to your point, Trevin, the same second that's available now, they may be more excited about rookies, but if you're after your rookie draft just like you are now and you're looking at a 23 second, it's kind of the same situation. So I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, I'm with you in that I would be looking to sell because I am not very optimistic that he's able to regain where he was at the end of last season, which is really sad.
But if you're looking to wait to sell until next summer, you got to be careful with that because the running back room that they have right now probably won't be the same as it will be next summer because the Rams very well could pick a running back in the second or third round next year because they know that Darrell Henderson's not really a full-time running back, and maybe they want to get their running back in the second or third round next year, and they want to make sure they have one. And maybe in a way they're kind of getting one in case Akers isn't going to be fully healthy. So you got to be careful with that too if you wait too long.
Yeah. And they do have their second and third round picks next year. I thought maybe that was part of the Stafford trade, but it was not. So that's a possibility.
So we just did that startup auction draft. The guy that got Cam Akers there, how much did he pay for that? About 70, I think, of the $500 budget. Man, That hurts. Didn't even get to play a game with him after the startup.
Brutal.
Mm-hmm.
So
You got any?
Darrell Henderson? Darrell Henderson, where do you guys have him for this season?
I'll bump him up. I'll bump him up a little bit. Like I said before, I don't think the Rams see him as like a full-time running back. He's not going to take Cam Akers' load. They're probably going to pick someone else up like Adrian Peterson, Todd Gurley, or Frank Gore. I mean, I don't know why they wouldn't. They have to, but unless they want to see what they have in Xavier Jones and I forgot his first name, Funk from Maryland. He had a pretty good year last year, filling in for Anthony McFarland after he left, which is I was kind of surprised with him. I know they drafted him like in the 7th round. There's another guy too, Raymond Clay.
Yeah, Clay.
And there's 3 guys there. Maybe you can stash one of those guys. I don't know who, but I still think they'll get like a guy like Gore, Peterson, or Todd Gurley. Todd Gurley's played for the Rams before. Their offensive coordinator coached at Washington Redskins when Adrian Peterson was there. So those are and Frank Gore. Frank Gore had a decent year last year, and I think any of those 3 guys will help him out.
Trevin, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm with Brent. I don't think all of a sudden Darrell Henderson's an RB1 this year, the top 12 range or anything like that. He's definitely going to get more touches than he was going to before, but I just don't. He doesn't have enough talent, and they're probably going to bring in somebody to take some of those touches away too.
Yeah, they have about $7 million in available salary cap space, and I would be shocked if it's Todd Gurley just because of the way that ended with him being cut. And
yeah, I don't think he was very happy.
Publicly calling for them to pay him the money that he was owed probably didn't. I don't think either side was real thrilled about how that ended. So, but there are, Brent, to your point, other options. You mentioned Peterson, Le'Veon Bell, also out there, Duke Johnson, Deion Lewis, LaShawn McCoy. So there are some options. I still think that Henderson is going to get the most work in that backfield, regardless of which of those options they bring in. Because while he's clearly not Cam Akers. I think he's at least as good or better than the rest of those options at this stage in their careers.
Yeah.
So I think he's going to be a viable running back too, with potential upside for one, depending on if they don't bring in somebody this offseason, and with that offense being potentially as good as we think it could be with Stafford running things. But I would probably bank on more running back to flex type production from Henderson this season.
So I have a question for you guys. Let's assume that they pick up Adrian Peterson. So who would you rather draft, or who would you rather have on your fantasy team? Myles Gaskin or Darrell Henderson?
For me, that's pretty easily Gaskin.
Yeah, I'd say Gaskin.
Maybe not easily, but I think I would take Gaskin.
Okay.
You?
I saw the question on Twitter, and I thought it was a good question. I don't know. It's if they got Peterson, I like Peterson. I'd probably go Gaskin too, I guess.
Yeah. I like that's good. That's really good. I think he's right in that range.
Adrian Peterson had 156 carries last year. 35 years old.
It's a damn shame what he did to DeAndre Swift. Or I should say what that coaching staff did. All right. Anything else on this before we move on, fellas?
No.
Nope.
All right. Well, and the other big news or semi-big news that came out this week was a story, but it was kind of a interesting thing more than a real actionable thing. So Aaron Rodgers turned down a 2-year extension offer from the Green Bay Packers this offseason. Sources told Terrestrial Takes correspondent Adam Schefter. The deal, sources said, would have tied the reigning MVP to the Packers for 5 more seasons and made him the highest paid quarterback and player in football. But apparently Aaron Rodgers is not all about the money, Trevin.
I guess not.
What
do you
think
guys think? Where's this leading now? We've talked about this all season long. I've kind of said that my most obvious thing to me was that Rodgers would be playing for the Packers. I thought there was too much money to lose to not play, and there's no incentive for the Packers to trade him. So all season I've thought that he's going to end up playing, and I guess I'm still on that for this year. I think he's still going to suit up for the Packers first game. What do you guys think?
I think the odds have, moved closer to him getting traded, I'd say. I still kind of think he might play for the Packers, but, you can definitely think about him possibly getting traded still. I'm thinking, compared to last week, I'm leaning more towards that way that he's going to get traded. So I don't know. That's kind of a wait and see. Well, hopefully we find out soon because I'm getting pretty antsy about this.
One of the things I read on Twitter this week that I'm kind of leaning towards at this point, as we get a few more tea leaves with this story, is that he may report to camp and then they trade him before the season starts, which would be interesting, but I don't know. Like, that may be the way I'm leaning, but I still don't have a strong feeling about it one way or the other.
I was thinking about this the other day. I think this is a perfect destination for him, and we haven't seen much of anybody talking about this team. Dynasty coach would have a heart attack if I said this, but I think it'd be awesome if he got traded to the Cleveland Browns. Gosh, it's the perfect team for him. I think that'll definitely make the Cleveland Browns Super Bowl, maybe even, Super Bowl or AFC favorites up there with the Chiefs and everything. I think that'd be great for the city of Cleveland and the Browns. They would probably have to trade Baker Mayfield to the Packers, let him duke it out with Jordan Love. But I think that'd be the perfect destination. Everybody's talking about the Broncos and the Raiders, but I think the Browns would be pretty cool. It was just me thinking. That'd be cool if it happens, and I think it should.
I could not picture Aaron Rodgers in that god awful orange helmet. I'm gonna be honest with you, Brent.
I just don't think you can't trade him if you're the Packers. There's no way to get value back. Like, I think you just call his bluff, say that he's not going to give up however many millions of dollars to sit out, and if he is playing, he's not going to tarnish his legacy and play bad on purpose. He's a gamer. He just wants to win. So I think it's pretty clearly they call his bluff and say, go be angry if you want, but go win some football games.
Well, he just won an NBA championship last night. Partial team owner of the Bucks.
Yep.
Yeah. Honestly, it'll be fascinating to see how this turns out. It's probably one of the most interesting stories of this offseason. But fellas, we've got a lot to get to, so let's hop into the main event. I really crawl it. Do you do anything with your Packers players on this news? Just because this is a fantasy football podcast? No.
Is this no? I don't think so either.
Not yet.
Yeah.
It's all just right. Another.
We'll talk more. We'll talk more when everything becomes official with Rodgers.
All right, let's hop into the main event.
No, but what if you got the Jones in particular? Do you do anything with Aaron Jones right now?
I'm about to cut you from this podcast. I was going to edit that out anyway, and now you're just making it harder. All right, lots to get to. Let's hop into the main event. For tonight's main event, we are previewing the AFC South. So we've got the Colts, Jaguars, Texans, and Titans. No guests this week, just the fellas. So we've got our normal categories that you know and love: the Dynasty Buy, the Dynasty Sell, the Dynasty Stash, the Redraft Sleeper, and the Redraft Fade. Let's start with the Dynasty Buy, as always. Trevin, kick us off.
Dynasty Buy. I'm going with DJ Chark. I think he's the most talented receiver on that Jaguars team. Finished at wide receiver 48 last year. They did add Marvin Jones. They got Chenault that's going to be going into his second year and probably probably improve his play a little bit. But I think Chark's the most valuable or the most talented receiver on that roster. I think it's going to turn around pretty quickly. He's getting passes from Lawrence instead of Minshew and Mike Glennon and Jake Luton since he's been there. So I like Chark. I think he's a good price right now. I think it's going to be a higher price if we're trying to get him next year.
He was my dynasty buy last offseason, Brent. You went with Ryan Tannehill, so that panned out really well. And our guest, Jim Sonis, went with T.Y. Hilton, so he might want that one back after what he saw last year. But 2 good picks for us. Trevin, I'm still a Chark believer. I think it did get a little more cloudy this offseason for him than it was last offseason, just with the addition of Marvin Jones. But that is a short-term addition, and you're looking at a dynasty buy here. Marvin Jones is 31, so who knows how much longer he's a factor in that offense. But I like the pick. I like DJ Chark a lot, and I look forward to seeing how he meshes with Trevor Lawrence this year.
I like the pick too. I do. I mean, last year I feel like he was drafted pretty high last year, and he's still kind of getting drafted a little high. But I like DJ Chark for dynasty.
Yeah, sometimes that post-hype year is the way to go.
Yeah.
It's interesting when you look at the dynasty ADP right now. DJ Chark is going as wide receiver 35.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll actually hop into my buy here because Laviska Shenault is going wide receiver 36. So they're going back-to-back in dynasty. And my buy is Laviska Shenault. He was an early second-round pick last year in the 2020 draft. He missed nearly 3 full games with a hamstring strain, but when he was active those other 13 weeks, he was wide receiver 28 in fantasy points. I love his versatility. He produced 600 yards and 5 touchdowns on 58 receptions, at 91 yards on 18 rushes. Just like we saw in college, he can do it all. His 6.0 average depth of target was 3rd lowest among receivers, but he made up the yards with his post-catch ability. He had 5.2 average run after the catch, which ranked 18th among receivers. What really has me excited, though, is he played an expanded role late last season. He had over 8 targets per game after week 13, so a strong end to that rookie season and bodes well, I think, for a sophomore year. You know, as Urban Meyer and Trevor Lawrence, as you alluded to, Trevin, and as much as Urban Meyer has given us reason to question him, we've seen him have success with versatile players like Shenault pretty routinely in the college game, and hopefully that can translate to the NFL as well. I think he's a good candidate for that second-year leap, and a full breakout is definitely possible, in which case you won't be able to get him for anywhere near his current price again. So Shenault is my pick. Same offense, a little different take there, Trevin.
I love Laviska Shenault. He's a great player, fun player to watch, unbelievable college football player. But I really don't love your pick for dynasty buy. There's other guys that I like around that spot, like Devontae Smith, Antonio Brown, Jerry Jeudy, Brandon Cooks. It's just, I mean, I'll get into it a little bit more later on, but not a huge fan. But I do like him. The thing with Laviska Shenault that I'll always remember, and we saw a little bit of it last year, is that he's a tough player. He's shown that he is injury prone, and he has missed a few games over his career, college and NFL. And it seems to happen when he gets a lot of touches, like getting thrown the ball a lot. I mean, it just I don't know. It's something about his body. But like I said, he's a tough player. He plays through it a lot of the time, but you can tell that he's hurt a lot. And I just feel like if he takes on a big load, we'll just see it again, like I do, like we all do year after year.
Yeah, I really like him as a player. Do the comments about ETN scare you at all, Levi, as far as what Shenault's role is going to be? That's my only holdup on it. I know it's probably mostly coach speak, but what Urban Meyer is describing is a lot where Shenault thrives. And if those touches are going to ETN instead of Shenault is the part that scares me about his situation.
It's certainly possible, and it is a fair concern at this point. I am hopeful that what happened there was Urban Meyer hadn't done his homework on the roster to that point, and now that he's got OTAs and starting to get in camp with these guys, he realizes what he has on Laviska Shenault and is counting his lucky stars that he wasn't able to grab Kadarius Toney and that he can use Travis Etienne in a more traditional running back role. Everything we've heard out of camp, which take it with a grain of salt this time of year, is great about Shenault. So I'm optimistic about his role in Urban's ability to figure out how to properly use him, but we'll see what happens this year.
Yeah, just the fact of Etienne being there doesn't scare me at all. I think they can both be fine together. It's just the role he's describing should be Chenault's role is all.
Yep, it'll be interesting to see how they break that down. Brent, who's your dynasty buy?
This is crazy. Marvin Jones.
So buying Jaguars receivers.
Yeah, we're all buying Jaguars receivers, different ones, but I really like Marvin Jones this year. You can get him for cheap. I actually got him in one of my dynasty leagues for pretty cheap. I just think he'll eventually be Trevor Lawrence's favorite wide receiver. I know that's saying a lot since DJ Chark is there, but Jones is the veteran, and I mean, it looked like Matt Stafford seemed like he really liked Marvin Jones, and Jones has had quietly a really good career. The last 7 or 8 years that he's been in the NFL, played at the Bengals before the Lions. Yes, he is 31 years old, but he did have his best season of his career just last season with Matt Stafford. And like I said, you can get him for very cheap. I think he's very capable of having a wide receiver 2 type year this year and possibly beyond, especially with Trevor Lawrence at quarterback. They might be, if he does good with Trevor Lawrence's first year, and I guess I never did look at his contract or anything, but if he does have a good year, I can see Lawrence really wanting to keep Marvin Jones around for at least a few more years.
Yeah, he's signed through 2022, but there is potential out after this year. So it'll probably depend how he performs, Brent.
Yeah.
The only thing I would quibble with you a little bit on, because I do like Marvin Jones, his best year was actually 2017. He had 1,100 yards. Last year he only had 978. He had 9 touchdowns both years, but a really good year last year.
But he did have he had a lot more catches last year though compared to the 2017 year.
7 more catches, so 200 extra yards probably counts a little more in your fantasy league than those 7 catches, but that's kind of quibbling. Like I mentioned, it's not a huge deal. Both really good years. I won't go into this too much because I have Marvin Jones for one of my other categories. So Trevin, I'll turn it over to you for any thoughts on Marvin.
It's tough for me to label it a dynasty buy when he's going to be, I don't want to be called ageist, but he's going to be 31. They have some younger receivers there that they might be looking to get more involved. So I know the price is probably low. I'd say if you are a competing team, it would be a good option to be a dynasty buy with a low price and probably have a good year this coming year. But I don't know how long you can depend on him in your dynasty.
Yeah, and it's obviously you're not going to have him for a long time. But if you're looking for a possible wide receiver 2 for the next couple of years, I think Marvin Jones could be that guy.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Brent, who's your dynasty sell?
Dynasty sell. Derrick Henry. I feel it's time. It's time to sell. Try to get some good assets for Derrick Henry. He's been great the last couple of years. Don't get me wrong. Last year at over 2,000 yards, 17 touchdowns. Amazing year last year. One of the better running backs that I've seen in my life. So he's been fun to watch, but I think it is time to sell. I do feel, this is not a spicy take or anything, but he won't repeat what he did last year. And however, I do still think he's a good football player, and he's going to help the Titans out quite a bit. I just don't think they'll use him as much as they've used him in the past. They need him to have those 25, 30, 35 carry games during the playoffs, not in week 4. So it's especially with the 17 game season. That's just more on his plate with all these carries that he's getting. And another thing I want to add is they did sign a very capable running back this offseason. I was really close to putting this guy as my stash or even a sleeper, but I didn't. Is Brian Hill. I definitely think he is the correct handcuff for Derrick Henry if you're looking to handcuff him, and that is not Darrington Evans. I think Brian Hill can handle that extra load with them taking away carries from Derrick Henry. And don't get me wrong, Tennessee is a great team, really good team, possible Super Bowl team. They're great at every position. And if they need to put some sort of a leash on Henry for weeks 1 through 17, they will, because just so they can sort of unleash him for the playoffs. So that's why I think it'd be a good time to sell Derrick Henry.
Oh, Brent. I don't disagree with potentially selling Derrick Henry. I just think that, to some of your points, like the volume of carries he's getting may go down a little bit, but I think we could see that decline a little bit for all running backs across the board just as they adjust to this 17-game regular season schedule. And I don't necessarily know that his decline is going to be that much more than any of the other running backs that we see in fantasy, as the lead back across these different teams.
Trade him for a receiver.
But do you think Derrick Henry's workload is going to decline more? Because like the 17-game schedule is something that applies to all teams.
It's not just because of this. I mean, that's just an extra detail I threw in there. It's just that they want to. I mean, this year they're looking to win the Super Bowl. Period. That's their goal, and they want to make sure that Derrick Henry is going to be fully healthy. They're probably not going to want to get him very many games during weeks 1 through 17 with more than 20 carries a game. So I mean, they got to watch it a little bit.
Yeah, I just still think he's going to have pretty high volume when you look at the scope of running backs. Like, it may go down a little, but I still think he's going to be on the higher end for volume of carries. And, of course, he's not a big factor in the receiving game, so you really are dependent on that rushing volume to get you weeks. But I think he could see a few more opportunities in the red zone this season with the addition of Julio Jones and the potential for this offense to be a little more efficient. He had 17 touchdowns last year and 16 in 2019, so there's not a lot of room for a ton more there. But I think on the goal line, he's the guy getting the ball regardless. So I think that will continue to be a big part of his game. It sounds like, Brent, you're expecting maybe a return to where he was a couple of years ago in 2019 when he had 1,500 yards. And even then, he's going to be a running back one. I don't see any signs from him that he's slowing down at all. I think he's got the build to be able to handle the workload. And if you're selling as a rebuilding team, I understand that. But if you're a contender, Derrick Henry is probably the exact type of running back you should be looking to acquire. Because, yes, he only has 1 or 2 more years, but he's the type of running back that could put you over the top, and that he's, continues to improve over these last couple of years. And like I said, I think he has a couple of years left. So he's currently going as running back 7. So it's not like he's going as running back 1 overall, even with that 2,000-yard season he's coming off. And I think he's appropriately priced, and I wouldn't be rushing to get him off my team in Dynasty. So I don't hate it, Brent. I think it's just more situational based on your team and where you're at.
Yeah, I agree with you there. If you don't have anybody else at running back, then and you have a good team otherwise, then you probably want to keep him. But if you have somebody who can back him up, and if you have another good 3 running backs on your team, then I feel like it would be beneficial to you to try to trade him maybe for another running back and a receiver or something.
Yeah. I do strongly disagree with your take that Brian Hill is the handcuff to own here, but
we will see. We will see. I feel strongly about that one. I mean, I don't know what Darrington Evans has shown you, but I think Brian Hill. I mean, there's a reason why they went out and got him. So
we'll have this talk later, guys.
We will.
Trevin, what do you think on Henry?
So he's also my dynasty sell, but it was actually more on a situation. To be honest, I couldn't find a lot of guys I needed dynasty sell in this one in this division. So, but it is based solely on this situation. He's not going to have 2,000 yards again. He's probably going to be closer to 1,200. Without that, getting the receptions, he's just going to be. He has kind of a ceiling. He's just not going to be running back 1, 2, or 3. So you have to know where you're at. Be honest with yourself on your league. If you're a top team, you definitely keep him because he has a high floor because the whole game plan runs through him with the Titans. And so, like Brent was saying, maybe they try to run him less, but I think if they were trying to win games, they need to keep running him because that's how they win games. So I don't think he's going to get less carries this year. It's just I don't know how many years you got left. So if you have a team that's not contending this year, I'd see what you can get for him.
1,200 yards is quite a decrease if you think he's not going to get less carries, Trevin. You're looking at an average yards per carry of just over 3 in that scenario. So is there a reason you're projecting such a decline in efficiency for Derrick Henry?
I shouldn't have said the same. He's not going to get 378 carries again this year, I don't think. That's a crazy number.
That's crazy.
How many carries is that a game?
Too much.
The average 23 and a half carries last season. He had 303 the year before, which works out to about 18. That was in 15 games. So that was 20 a game.
Yeah. So I think they'd want him. Maybe they go crazy and keep giving him 30 times a game, but I think he's going to be close to that 20 carries a game and puts him at 1,400, 1,500 yards.
Well, you just went up 200 or 300 yards from where you were. So if you're at 20 carries a game, that's 340 carries. And so you're looking at if you average 4.5 yards a carry, which would 4.5 would be his second worst of his career going back to his rookie season. He'd be at 1,500 yards. So that's the thing with Derrick Henry is just I think 20 carries is probably a reasonable projection, like you mentioned, Trevin, per game on a per game basis. And if he even averages 4.5 yards a carry, that's 1,500 yards. And if he can get up to 5 in a 17 game schedule, that's 1,700 yards. So it's just.
Yeah. And that puts him at running back 8 or 9 because he doesn't get the catches.
Yeah. And so that's kind of why I'm looking. I mean, last year he was running back 3, but to your point, Trevin, if you go back to 2019, he was running back 7, so pretty close to what you're talking about, and that was when he had 1,500 yards.
Yeah, and led the league in rushing that year.
Yeah, I just think he's so safe that from just based on that volume and what he's demonstrated with his touchdown consistency and his efficiency over the past couple of years that I understand having him as a sell just based on where he is in his career. But again, if you're at all looking to compete, I think you're going to have a really hard time selling him and improving your team.
Who do you got for your sell, Levi?
Oh, so just like Daniel Jones last week, this one feels kind of obvious, but there's still a lot of optimism out there about this guy, and it's Carson Wentz. He's going as quarterback 24 in Superflex startups, which pretty close to, I think, where we said Daniel Jones was last week. Obviously, last year, everyone knows how bad he was. 16 touchdowns to 15 interceptions, only a 57% completion percentage, and only 2,600 yards. If you go back to 2019, though, it's kind of interesting. Wentz that year completed 64% of his passes, threw for 4,000 yards, 27 touchdowns to only 7 interceptions, finished as quarterback 10. But there were a couple warning signs that year that a year like 2020 was possible, and maybe he got a little lucky. So in 2019, he was number 5 in danger plays, which are defined as a play in which the quarterback lacked awareness or took an unnecessary risk that could have resulted in a turnover. And he was number 22 in true passer rating, which is quarterback rating after factoring out unpressured throwaways and drop passes. So if you flash forward to 2020, again, those two things didn't change a lot. He was number 4 in danger plays. He was number 2 in interceptable passes and number 32 in true completion percentage. So some of the warning signs were there in 2019, even though the results were great. And I think we maybe have seen kind of some regression based on some of those warning signs in 2020. And that may be more reflective of who he really is and what we should expect going forward to some degree. And so even if he rebounds closer to his former self, he's still going to a team that was number 23 in pass plays per game in 2020. So I have a hard time seeing him finishing as more than a middling quarterback too, and that's with significant risk that he is replaced going into next season. And when you look at those startup drafts, there are several receivers going around him in drafts that I'd be happy to trade him for. And that list includes players like Cortland Sutton, Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, and Devontae Smith. So give me all of those guys instead of Carson Wentz, because I just don't see the upside for the reasons I mentioned. And I think there is significant downside risk with him, which is kind of the opposite of what I'm looking for in Dynasty.
It's not a horrible pick for Dynasty. I don't know. It's I mean, the guys that he's surrounded by compared to Philadelphia are a lot better. He has a much better offensive line, and much better skill position players. He's reunited with Frank Reich, and Frank Reich wasn't with him during those signs that you talked about in 2019. He's getting drafted. Like low end quarterback too, and I was kind of surprised at the players. I think people would be crazy in Dynasty to trade Devontae Smith for Carson Wentz. Or even Cooper Kupp. I would do that too, but I kind of like Carson Wentz. So I don't know. That's all I got to say about that.
I agree. I think you had a better sell than me. I just didn't even consider Wentz because I would have sold him a long time ago. If you're still holding Carson Wentz, I would be getting rid of him. I think he's one of the worst quarterbacks in the league. That clip that goes around anytime there's Wentz news of him just backpedaling last year into a sack and a fumble is hilarious. And that's just one of the worst quarterback plays I've ever seen. And I think he's really bad. I don't really know what happened to him, but I would try to get him off my team and sell him for just about anything.
I want to circle. Go ahead, Levi. Go ahead.
Nope, go ahead.
I want to circle back around to this. If I was able to get Carson Wentz on my dynasty team, and if I went to the Devontae Smith owner and offered him a trade, and that person looked at the trade calculator would say to do it.
Oh, I was just looking at ADP, startup ADP, Brent. So those are players going around him. So essentially you are trading those players for Wentz based on startup value, because if you take Wentz, you're passing on them.
I assume it's probably Superflex, what you're looking at too. But
correct. Yep.
Wow. Okay.
That's the thing, though. There's only 32 starting quarterbacks. So all of them have value because you just have to fill that spot. But I'd try like hell not to be Wentz.
Yeah. Trevin, who you stashing?
So this is why I was hoping to save that handcuff conversation. I'm stashing Darrington Evans. Is that how you say that?
Jeez.
He was the third-round pick for the Titans last year, so he's got some draft capital. He got injured last year. He got a hamstring injury, went on the IR in week 5, had some decent games at the end of the year. So I think he's pretty easily the handcuff I want there at the Titans. And if anything happens to Henry this year, there's somebody's going to be getting in line for a lot of touches.
Brent, as the noted Brian Hill fan, what's your counter argument here?
I hate it. I hate the pick. All right.
What do you love about the 25-year-old 5th-round pick Brian Hill, who had the Falcons running back room to himself last year for a lot of the year?
He shared it with Ito Smith and Gurley. Gosh. Well, first of all, Evans is not a very good running back, I don't think, and I think we'll all see that this year. And like I said, I just think Brian Hill's going to have a role in this offense. It'll be a small role. He'll take some away from Henry. Evans, on the other hand, he might make the team. That's about it. He better know how to play special teams, or else he won't be making the team. So, like
Levi,
I said, hate the pick.
As the Titans fan, who do you think the backup running back the Titans is this year?
As I kind of alluded to earlier, I think it is Darrington Evans. I think Brian Hill, like you mentioned, Trevin, kind of had his shot last year with the Falcons, and he didn't do terribly, but I think he's just kind of a guy. And Darrington Evans, I think, has a little more intrigue. He missed half the season last year with that hamstring strain, so I don't think it's quite fair to judge him based on his performance last year when he had 14 carries for 54 yards just based on such limited opportunity. We're going into the 2021 season. He's now had the full off season, full camp and everything with the Titans without the impact of COVID, and hopefully he's fully healthy this year, and I think he'll be a little more intriguing to step into that backup role behind Derrick Henry. And I just think Brian Hill's a guy. He's not anybody I'm looking to seek out. And like you mentioned, Trevin, he did fine last year when he got his chance, but it wasn't like he was taking over and breaking out all over the place. So sorry, Brent, but that's kind of where I'm at.
All right. I just think Brian Hill is a better guy than Darrington Evans.
It's entirely possible. We just haven't seen enough of Evans to really know, I don't think.
Yeah, and obviously I don't feel that great about Brian Hill to make him. I guess we're not doing stash yet, but I don't have him as my stash, so I feel higher about someone else.
We are doing stashes. Darrington Evans is Trevin's.
Oh yeah, that's
stash,
right. That's right. So we haven't talked about my stash yet, though, so I didn't.
Let's talk about your stash, Brent.
Okay.
Who is it?
Okay. My stash is Davis Mills, Houston Texans quarterback, drafted in the early third round. Obviously, he has an opportunity this year with Deshaun Watson more than likely not playing another down for the Houston Texans. But let me tell you a little bit about Davis Mills. In 2017, he was a 5-star, top 10 overall player in the nation, according to Rivals. Number 1 pro-style quarterback from Georgia. Offers from anywhere. He could have went anywhere, but he chose to go to Stanford. Great college. Rated higher than Tua, Kellen Mond, and Mac Jones. But like I said, the opportunity with him playing behind Tyrod Taylor, and who knows, maybe Tyrod can get another lung punctured again by the doctor, and he'll get an early opportunity like Herbert did last year. And I just think as a stash, you don't want to draft him as your quarterback 2, obviously, unless you have like Tyrod Taylor or something, or Tyrod Taylor as your 2. But you don't want to draft Mills as the quarterback 2. But I think he eventually could be your quarterback 2 by the end of the year. So I really like taking a chance on Davis Mills with your 3rd quarterback.
Trevor, are you Davis Mills fan?
I agree with it. I think the Texans are going to be incentivized to lose more this year. I don't think they're going to play Tyrod Taylor a whole lot and have him win a couple of games on accident. They might as well throw Mills out there, see what they have with him, and try to get a better draft pick next year because they are going to be a bad team. So I don't playing Tyrod wouldn't actually help him, I think, in the long run. So I think Mills is going to get some play this year, so you're going to get some stats, even if he's not the guy going forward there.
And if he looks good, then he might be the quarterback for their future.
Yep, and then they can get that high pick and used on somebody else, and maybe Mills stays as the quarterback.
Yeah, if Deshaun doesn't play this year, which I kind of don't expect him to at this point, I think Davis Mills will get a shot at some point. It's shocking just looking at how high of a pick they spent on him. They took him at the 3rd pick in the 3rd round, so pretty good draft capital. And the other thing that's kind of shocking about Davis Mills is how light of a resume he has. He only played 14 games in college, and 8 of those were his 2019 and 5 in 2020. So not a lot of work to base our judgment on here. He did have a QBR in the top 20 each of the past few years, which, as I mentioned previously, I think is something that kind of I look for when I'm looking at these quarterbacks. He had a really good completion percentage, over 65% for his collegiate career, 18 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. So there are some things to like here, and obviously, Brent, you covered the recruiting pedigree. So I think they believe in him to some degree to spend that kind of draft capital on him, and there's nothing in his relatively short resume that really turns me off from a dynasty perspective. So sure, take a flyer on Davis Mills.
Yeah,
Their first pick in the draft.
Was it really? Wow.
Yeah, they didn't have a first or second round pick.
And the only thing that really bothers me about Mills is you said that he had 14 games in college. Injuries were big in college for him. So hopefully he can get through that, and hopefully he doesn't have to deal with that anymore because he has a great opportunity.
Yeah. So I'll give my dynasty stash, speaking of injuries, which is Paris Campbell. The Colts selected Campbell in the second round of the 2019 draft, but he's only appeared in 9 games due to injury. He had an abdominal strain in week 4 of his rookie season, which led to surgery that caused him to miss 3 games, a hand fracture in week 10 that caused him to miss 4 games, and a foot fracture in week 14 that caused him to miss 3 games. So rough rookie season for Paris. So as a result, he barely played. He had 22 touches in 7 games. But he appeared to be on the verge of a breakout in his 1 game in 2020. He was getting a lot of buzz leading up to the season last year. He played 83% of the snaps in week 1, had 9 targets, which he turned into 6 catches for 71 yards, and he also had a carry for 9 yards. Unfortunately, in his second game, he had MCL and PCL sprains that required surgery and cost him the rest of the season. So it's been a rough go for Paris in his pro career so far. But he is kind of an intriguing, just kind of post-hype guy still at this point. You've got T.Y. Hilton there, who's now 31 years old. Michael Pittman Jr. is still kind of an unproven commodity. Campbell obviously has a ton of speed. He ran a 4.3 140. He's super quick. He ran a 4.03 shuttle, so great fit for the slot from that perspective. He has good size at 6 foot, 205 pounds. He gets involved in the rushing and the returning game as well. I just think he's kind of a value right now. He's going 179th overall, wide receiver 67, and Superflex ADP. And you can probably get him as a throw-in for a trade pretty easily, which is where I'd be targeting him at this point. So Paris Campbell, I think, has some upside in this offense this year as their slot receiver.
Yeah, I like it. I think it's a good stash. I think some people are higher on Pittman, but I think I'd take Campbell over him. Pittman kind of had his chance last year where he had a veteran quarterback and was healthy for most of the year and just never really put it together. Only ended up with, 40 catches, something like that, but where they kind of needed that one receiver and he didn't step up to it. And I don't like the quarterback. We've talked about Wentz, but I think if I was going to pick one of the receivers, I'd take Campbell, especially at his price compared to Pittman.
I like it, Levi. The only thing with him is injuries, like you alluded to, and I don't know if I like him more than Michael Pittman, but I still like Paris Campbell.
Come on, Brent, let's get spicy.
I don't know. I can't. And this kind of leads to my redraft sleeper. You guys got your stashes in?
Before you get into that, Brent,
okay.
I just wanted to recap our dynasty sells from last season. I was going to mention these before we got into them, but mine was David Johnson, so I feel pretty good about that one. Yours, you should feel really great about, even though it's for something you never could have predicted. Yours was Deshaun Watson.
Wow, good call, Brent.
I had the inside info from the masseuse.
Holy cow. Wow, that'd be the best sell of all time if you had done that last year if you had Watson.
You guys gave me a lot of crap for that one. And I probably deserved it too.
Not as much crap as our poor guest Jim Sonis deserves for this next pick. He picked A.J. Brown as his dynasty sell last season.
Oh, boy.
So I remember that.
Jim's having a rough go of it. His dynasty stash was Divine Ozigbo, so kind of right idea, wrong player in that backfield for him from a dynasty stash perspective. Brent, yours was Michael Pittman, and mine was Josh Oliver, so your Pittman one looks okay. Probably the best out of those 3.
Oliver's at the Ravens right now, so you never know.
Yeah, injuries are the thing that keeps holding him back. And as we get to our redraft sleeper, Brent, you and me both had Leonard Fournette last year, so that started off kind of rough, but it actually worked out okay. And then Jim had Laviska Shenault, who we still like this season, so still hope for Laviska. Brent, who are you going with this year?
Redraft sleeper is Carson Wentz. We talked a little bit about him. I know you guys don't like him. I really don't like him for Dynasty that much either. But who's behind him? And he's playing on a really good offense. He's got 2 or 3 really good running backs in the backfield. He's got 3 or 4 pretty good receivers. He's got 2 decent tight ends, one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, one of the better defenses in the NFL. He's reunited with Frank Reich. And we're talking fantasy here. I mean, I think you're drafting him as a late quarterback too. I think he is capable of giving you a quarterback, like a late quarterback 1 season this year. He's capable of it in that offense. So that's why I'm picking Carson Wentz for my redraft sleeper. It's just, I mean, with everything surrounding it, I know he's not a great quarterback like we thought he was 3 years ago, but with all those things, great offense, reunited with his quarterback, with his offensive coordinator, I just think he's worth a shot as your quarterback too.
I just think quarterback 2 is his ceiling, honestly. Like I gave some of my stats earlier, but just the volume I think of in that offense. Yes, it is a good offense, but I think they're primarily going to be focused on running the ball and limiting his opportunity to screw up. And so in redraft especially, I'm more inclined to go somebody with a little higher upside than taking a shot on Wentz.
Yeah, I hate it. Just to be honest, I think the way this team succeeds is they don't throw very much. I don't like his receiver weapons very much. T.Y. Hilton, Pittman, Campbell. We talked about Campbell as a sleeper, but it's nobody I'm looking for this year to be really successful. So they got the good line. I think their way they succeed is just by running the ball and not having Wentz turn it over every game. And last year, and we're talking about fantasy, so even if they're a successful team, that doesn't mean Wentz is going to have a good fantasy year. And last year, Rivers was 18th quarterback and Wentz was 21st. I don't expect him to be any higher than that, so I'm avoiding him.
All right.
Yep. I'll go next. My redraft sleeper is Marvin Jones, who we've already talked about a little bit tonight. He's currently going 127th overall as wide receiver 51 in ESPN's ADP. Wide receiver 51 is extremely low for a guy whose finishes the past 4 seasons were wide receiver 29, wide receiver 24 in 13 games, a wide receiver 60 in 9 games, and wide receiver 12. So he's missed a few games but I think you can count on him as a high-end flex play who isn't costing you anywhere near that going in the 11th round of drafts. He's now walking into a situation in Jacksonville where they don't have, I don't think, a clear wide receiver 1 between him, Chark, and Chenault. And he's working with a rookie quarterback, but one who I think we're all pretty optimistic could be pretty good this year right off the bat, and potentially could have numbers comparable to what we saw from Stafford in Detroit these past few years. The team situation is also pretty similar to Detroit, where you have a head coach who seems like he has no idea what he's doing, but does know how to coach some offense, and they're probably going to be playing from behind a fair amount this year. So I like Marvin Jones as kind of a player with with upside to be your flex on a week-to-week basis who's going in the double-digit rounds.
I obviously love that pick. I just have a question for you, though. With you liking Laviska Shenault and you liking Marvin Jones, does this mean that you're down on DJ Chark this year then?
Yeah, you're the big Chark guy.
I still like him. I think that I don't think any of them have wide receiver 1 upside, but I think they're all kind of in that wide receiver 2 or 3 range, honestly, is probably the most likely outcome.
Okay.
All right. You hate Chark. Yeah. You used to be in love with Chark. Now you're in like with Chark. I got it.
Hey, yep, that's pretty much where I'm at. Trevin, who's your sleeper?
So my sleeper is Travis Etienne. So I'm staying with the Jaguars. I had what he's going for in ADPs. He's 24th in redraft ADP right now. If you just look at the history of first-round running backs taken, they get that volume right away. That if somebody takes them, they use them. So I'll just read you the most recent first-round picks. We had Najee Harris, Travis Etienne, of course, this year. Last year, Clyde. 2019, Josh Jacobs. 2018, Saquon, Rashard Penny, Sony Michel. So a couple duds there. Then Leonard Fournette, Christian McCaffrey, Zeke, and Todd Gurley, Melvin Gordon. So that goes back to 2015. So these first-round running backs, they get their volume right away, and I think you're going to get more fantasy points than what he's currently going for at the 24th overall running back ADP.
Where do you think he finishes, Trevin?
Higher than 24. Now I would just say he's probably going to finish in that 15 to 16, 17 range.
Gotcha.
That'd be pretty good.
Yeah, I like the pick. I looked at him too. I just couldn't quite pull the trigger just because some of the unknowns there with James Robinson, I think, is still going to be a factor. I don't think he's going to be the lead back by any means. I do think it'll be Etienne, especially as we get into the season a little bit, Trevin. But Etienne obviously has the pass catching upside, certainly in that offense as well. Built-in rapport, Trevor Lawrence. There's a lot of things to like with Etienne. So I like the pick. I just, when I looked at who's going around him right now in ESPN's live draft ADP, he's going like right between Kareem Hunt, Chase Edmonds, Myles Gaskin, David Montgomery, kind of in that range. So I do think there's a good chance he could beat those guys out, but I didn't feel like he stuck way out. So while I like the pick, that's kind of why I just went with someone else.
I like ETN too. Just not enough to pull the trigger on him to be my sleeper. I think 24 is about where he'll end up, 20 to 24, I'd say. Just James Robinson there. He's proven that he can do pretty good, and I just think he'll take some from him. So, but I really like ETN. Good pick.
Absolutely. All right, I'll go first with my fade, and before I do that, I'll just recap the fades from last year. Brent, you had Phillip Rivers, I had T.Y. Hilton, and Jim had Brandon Cooks, so no huge, bold claims there, and I think they all worked out okay. Brandon Cooks, I think, did all right, but my fade this year is Julio Jones. I'm getting a little spicier. So Julio's currently going as wide receiver 15 in ESPN's redraft ADP. He's coming into a Tennessee offense that I just don't think can support a wide receiver 1 in A.J. Brown and a high-end wide receiver 2. And I think his ceiling's closer to what we saw from Corey Davis last year when he finished as wide receiver 32. I think we all agree, we're all A.J. Brown stands on this podcast, that he's going to get his. He's the alpha in this offense, even with Julio there. Julio is great, but he is now 32 years old. He's slowing down. We've seen this a little over the past couple of years. His average target distance is declining. He was 43rd among receivers in average target distance in 2020. His hog rate, which is the percentage of targets per snap that he plays, went from number 3 among receivers in 2019 to number 31 among receivers in 2020, which I think reflects him sliding from that number 1 alpha role in Atlanta to a number 2 role with Calvin Ridley there on the opposite side. And I think we'll see something similar in Tennessee with A.J. Brown there. He's moving to a Tennessee offense that was number 30 in pass plays per game last season, including number 29 in pass rate in neutral game situations. So they just haven't shown the desire to throw the ball a lot, even in neutral game situations. I don't see that changing anytime soon, as we talked about a little earlier with Derrick Henry. So if he's not going to dominate the target share as the number 2 wide receiver, and he's not going to be in a high volume passing offense like he was in Atlanta, I have a really hard time seeing how he finishes as wide receiver 15. So I just think he's incredibly unlikely to return his value as an early 4th round pick, and I'd go another direction at that point in the draft.
I love the spiciness of your take, and I love your take. So
yeah,
it was good. Yeah,
I thought it was a little spicy, but you backed it up. I like it.
Yeah, good points.
Thanks, fellas. Trevin, you want to go next?
Yeah, my redraft fade. Tough to follow that spiciness, but I'm sticking with the Jags. I've got Trevor Lawrence. He's currently going as quarterback 14 in the ESPN ADP. I'll just read you off the best rookie finishes for quarterbacks for the past 6 years. Last year we had Justin Herbert, who might have had the best rookie year of all time for a quarterback. He finished 10th. And Daniel Jones the year before finished 22nd. Baker Mayfield 17. Deshaun Watson 25th. Carson Wentz 24th. Jameis Winston was 14 in 2015. So I think if you're taking Trevor Lawrence at the 14th quarterback, you're just banking on him doing better than almost every other rookie quarterback before him, and I don't like those odds. So I wouldn't count on him to be a quarterback 2 this year because it doesn't happen with rookies. It doesn't say anything bad about him, but it takes a little bit to get adjusted to the NFL.
But he's better than every other quarterback that you just mentioned.
There was some other guys that also were on this that didn't get the points their rookie year.
All right. I figured I was prepared that you'd say something bad about my guy Trevor Lawrence, but
I got nothing bad to say about him. I just don't trust rookie quarterbacks.
I get it. It's I mean, yeah, I think they'll run the ball a lot this year. Even though they might be down in some games, I don't think they're that bad of a team. They're not that bad of a defense. I mean, the defense isn't great, but I think they'll be in a lot of games, and I think they'll win a lot of games. That's why I think they'll run the ball with ETN and James Robinson quite a bit. So that's the only way. That's why I didn't pick Trevor Lawrence for like my buy or anything like that. So, I mean,
we talked about this previously. I think you projected him to win. What was it, 9 or 10 games or something, Brett?
Yeah. It was around there. I still think it's gonna be around there.
Well, you got an extra game added to the schedule, so that helps your case.
Good point.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I don't have a strong take here either way. Trevor, you say he's going, I think, as wide receiver 14, something like that.
Quarterback 14, yeah.
Yeah, so I wouldn't be surprised at all if that's kind of where he finishes. I think some of those other quarterbacks you mentioned, Herbert was the best at 10, but there were some others in that mid-teen range, if I remember right.
Jameis Winston was 14 and Baker Mayfield was 17.
Yeah, so I think he's going probably about where I would take him. So I don't hate it, but I don't think he's an extreme outlier or anything. He's not going as a quarterback 1.
The only one of these rookie quarterbacks that were selected first, that finished first out of rookies, was Jameis Winston and Baker Mayfield.
Gotcha. It'll be interesting to see. There are certainly 2 other good candidates this year. The question with Fields and Lance is just when they start, if it's week 1 or if it takes a few games. And I think Lawrence is clearly starting week 1, so that helps him in that regard.
Can't believe you're slighting Wilson like that.
I think that could also be a factor in what you mentioned, Trevin, as far as final finish for some of these rookie quarterbacks is how many are really starting from week 1. I know that kind of maybe on a per game basis they would have finished a little better, but it's probably a little harder to dig up those stats for you.
Go on. Who's next?
Brent, take us home.
Oh, Levi, you're going to hate this one. My fade is Laviska Shenault. And I talked about it a little bit, about his injury history. And like I said, he's a tough player and all that. And he'll play through it, but that doesn't make him a better football player because of that. And the fact that I think the Jaguars will run it quite a bit. ETN and Robinson will get a lot of carries. And even, I mean, you'd be surprised with Trevor Lawrence with the way that he can run the ball too. He's a pretty good runner too. I'm hoping that Urban Meyer doesn't run him that much, but his history with quarterbacks, he does run them every once in a while. And Trevor Lawrence, if you look at his rushing stats, it'll surprise you. But with my love for Marvin Jones this year, and I still like DJ Chark. That makes Laviska Shenault kind of the odd man out. But like I said, I really hope he proves me wrong. He's probably my favorite receiver to watch out of those 3. But with him being ranked around Devontae Smith, Antonio Brown, Jerry Jeudy, Brandon Cooks, and Marvin Jones, I'm picking all those other guys ahead of Laviska Shenault. So that's why I have him as my fade this year.
Yeah, it's in like I mentioned, Brent. I have all three pretty close when I just kind of look forward at what I'm expecting this year. And Chenault's going 33rd among receivers, Chark's going 38th, and then I mentioned Marvin Jones is in the 50s. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if he does finish third out of those three, but I am a little more optimistic than you are. So I don't like your pick, but I respect it. How about that?
Sounds good.
Yep, that works for me.
All right, fellas, we're skipping the question of the week this week, and given due to time constraints, so let's do a quick beer check. I got a Summer Shandy again this week. To everyone's surprise, I'll go 7.5. Brent,
I got a Fat Tire. I don't think I've reviewed this one yet, but I've had it before. It's from the brewery from Colorado, New Belgium. I will give it a 7.9. It's a pretty good beer.
I've got a Levi Special, a Samuel Adams Summer Ale. It's a good one. We'll do a 7.8 on that one. We did a guest spot on a podcast earlier, so I drank 2 beers, and it's peach beer summer, baby. So I got a Shiner Peach, and I really like that one even more. So we'll do 8.4 on that one.
Wow.
2-for-1 special from Trevin this week.
Yep. Shout out Aaron Wilcox. It's peach beer summer.
All right. Well, thanks for being part of the Fantasy Players Club, everybody. We'll have a new episode for you next week that'll live stream on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. Until then, on behalf of Brent Hud Hikus and Trevin the Baby Maker Cremosta, this is Levi the Heartbreak Kid Valentine, wishing you a great week.
See ya.
See ya.
All right, fellas. After show, we got to kick it off with an accountability check. I promised. So, AFC East preview last year. Brent, my dynasty buy was Cam Newton. Pretty bad pick. Yours was Chris Herndon. So neither one of us did too good there.
Jeez.
My sell was
thinking.
My sell was a little better, and so was yours. Mine was Le'Veon Bell, and yours was Sonny Michel. So those worked out all right.
Those are pretty easy ones, pretty obvious ones, I thought, though.
Yeah. My stash was... Go ahead, Brent.
I was just going to say, I was still flustered by our dynasty buys. We said it was dynasty buy?
Dynasty buy.
Yeah.
And God.
Maybe I should retire right now. Bad.
My stash was Tua, which is kind of a weak pick, and yours was Malcolm Perry.
Ooh.
My sleeper was Chris Herndon, so we were both kind of high on Herndon last year.
What the hell?
Yours was he had the good 4-game sample size, Trevin, and then he missed the whole year and he was coming back. So I think that was what we were hoping for. Brent, yours was, of course, famously Devin Singletary.
Oh, that's where it all started, huh?
Yeah, it's better than Herndon, though.
Yep, and my redraft fade was Singletary, so that is where the magic happened. And yours was Brashad Perriman. So that worked out all right for both of us on the fade side. NFC East, real quickly. This is the one when we had Jordan Richards on at Chubboy J Rich. If you're not following him, you should be. My dynasty buy was the same as this year. Michael Gallup.
Just sticking
and
with it.
That was Jordan's as well. Yours was Tony Pollard, Brent. My sell was Zach Ertz, so that looks pretty good right now. Yours was Miles Sanders, which looks all right.
Right.
Well, Sanders isn't tanked in value, but he's definitely gone down. I'll give you that.
He was getting drafted top 6 or 7 last year, and maybe even higher in Dynasty.
Yeah. Jordan's was Amari Cooper. So
that's a good
that
pick.
one.
Oh, what was it? This was Sell, wasn't it?
Sell, yeah. So that wasn't the best, but
that wasn't very good.
My stash was Tony Pollard. Yours was Antonio Gandy Golden, and Jordan had Steven Sims Jr. So no real hits there. Although Tony Pollard looks like he's still a chance.
You won that one.
My redraft sleeper, and I would like to note this was before the allegations came out, was Darius Geis. So
Good pick, idiot.
that one went downhill before the season started. Brent, yours was similarly bad, and Dwayne Haskins.
Shoot.
And Jordan's was pretty good. Antonio Gibson worked out all right.
Yeah.
My fade was Amari Cooper, not great. Yours was Darius Slayton, Brent, and so was Jordan's. Also Darius Slayton. So there we go.
Not bad. Not bad. Except for Cam Newton, Chris Herndon. That's crazy to look back at that.
Yep.
Kind of fun.
Well, yep. Well, let's call it a show, guys. See y'all next week.
See ya.